All right, welcome to Live, Lead, and In Between, a podcast for leaders who want to be better at leading in life and everywhere in between. My name is Travis Jones, and I'm the host for this podcast, and we've got a fun show today about change, so let's get after it. All right, we're back. I say we're back. I lost my podcasting space back in February, and I had to try to figure out how to do this. And I spent some time actually working through maybe doing mobile, things like that, and that just didn't really work out for me, and I couldn't get the quality that I was looking for with a mobile setup. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to create something from nothing, and here it is. So this is the new podcast space that we're hopefully going to be using for some time. So again, if you're new to the podcast, my name is Travis Jones, and I am the host for this podcast. And this is a podcast called Live, Lead, and In Between, and it's a podcast for leaders who want to be better at leading in life and everywhere in between. If you subscribe to this podcast, you'll see that on occasion, you'll have messages that drop because I do serve at a local church, and I occasionally will preach, and I'll put those messages up there. So you'll get those as well with this kind of whole setup with that. But it has been a minute. Now, before we actually get into any of the content for today, I want to do a shout out. There is a Patreon that I've set up for those of you who really enjoy this kind of content and would like to help support the podcast. Now, I am not trying to make a living off of doing this. I am actually just trying to use that to actually buy some extra equipment and things like that. So if you're interested in being a part of that and helping to make this podcast great, you can actually subscribe. I think the baseline thing is like $5 a month. And so if you are interested in that, I'm putting the thing on the screen right now. So you can actually, if you want to go there later, you can, and you actually can subscribe. And I'm working on what that actually looks like for the podcast and some other things like deep casts, and where we go into deeper conversations, and maybe I bring guests on for that for the Patreon members. So I want to let you know that that's there. And as always, you can shoot me contacts or leave comments here as well. So today's podcast, this is I forgot the episode number. I think we're on episode 75, and it feels like it should be a lot longer than that, but we're on episode 75 because I had to go back and count. And episode 75 is going to be about change. Now, I was through the whole process of working through where to do this podcast. Some things kind of popped up in my spirit, and here's the interesting thing: when things pop up in my spirit, I have to pay attention to them, as should you. And the thing that popped up in my spirit happened when, again, I was considering what to do with the podcast, and I was, taking note of the things that I believe that God had told me to do. And there was just one day where I was sitting there and I was reading scripture, and I was feeling kind of dry. And so I did that whole method where I'm just going to read wherever the scripture opens, which, by the way, I don't recommend that as your primary way of studying scripture. But I popped to open the Bible, and it was in Ecclesiastes. And Ecclesiastes 4 specifically was where I started reading. And when I read that, the Lord spoke to me. And I'm going to read it to you. It says, "Farmers who wait on perfect weather never plant. If they watch every cloud, they never harvest." And as I read that, I thought to myself, oh my gosh, I'm the farmer. I'm the farmer who's waiting on the right time, because God had told me things to do. And I kept looking at the sky thinking, okay, well, it'll be a better day to do that this day than the other, right? And that just jumped out it smacked me in the face. And I began to think about all the things that God has told me to do. And so that set a fire under me. And so I went to bed that night, and I was processing through those things, and I was thinking through those things. And I woke up the next morning, and I looked in the mirror, as I'm prone to do. You brush your teeth, the same morning routine. And as I looked in the mirror, I realized I didn't like what I was seeing in the mirror. And I don't mean just, I don't like who I am kind of thing. I realized that I had actually kind of let myself go a little bit. I had been saying I was one thing and not the other. And I realized that some things needed to change. And so that's what this podcast is about. It's about change. And what you have to know is that change is one of the hardest things to do in our lives. It's one of the most difficult things to do in our lives, not because it's actually hard to do, but because we avoid it because we believe it's hard to do. And as I looked at myself in the mirror, I thought, yeah, I need to make some changes. I had spent some time a while back actually making some systems and things like that to try to help me get to some goals and things like that. And then life happened and it derailed all of it. But the one thing that kept popping in my mind during this was, if I need to change and I need to meet these goals, the only person, I should say, that can actually do anything about that is me. Because I don't know if you know this or not, but you are the only one that is in control of you. You're not in control of anybody else. No matter how hard you try to control other people, you're not. And if you really try hard, that actually slips over and actually is called manipulation, which is a form of witchcraft. But I digress. So I looked in the mirror and thought, man, there's some things that need to change. There's some things that really need to change. So for me, what were some of those things? Again, I was looking in the mirror and I thought, well, physically, I've had some goals for a long time and I need to actually take some action to make those things happen. I have all the tools, and actually, it was funny. I was praying, and I was like, God, I need to make some changes, and I was like, I need this, I need this, I need this, and He very clearly spoke to me and says, no, you have what you need to do what you need to do, and so I took that and I ran with it, but physically, there were some things I needed to do. I have had some goals for a while, and I've had everything in my possession to be able to do them. I've just not done it. And we'll get to why I haven't done it. And then the second thing that I thought that needed to change was, I am a pretty organized guy when it comes to things. But the second thing was I needed to really stick by my systems that I set up, because they were realistic, and I spent a lot of time actually working through what would make them successful and what wouldn't. And so physically, there's some things I needed to do to actually change my, what I wasn't happy with. And then also systematically, there were some things that I needed to do to change what I wasn't happy with. And so I started implementing a process to actually do that. But going back to change and why it's the hardest thing, why did I not make those changes prior to that moment? Well, the only thing I can come up with was, actually a couple things, was number one, the enemy was deceiving me into thinking that those changes were actually going to be harder than they were. And don't get me wrong, change is hard. Making a change is hard, but it's not as hard as you think. But I came up with the idea that maybe the enemy was actually selling me a load of lies about how hard it was going to be to make some changes with that. And then secondarily, the second thing that popped in my spirit as to why that I wasn't making the changes that I needed to make was simply due to laziness. And again, I am not a lazy person, but for some odd reason, I was not doing the things that needed to be done to do the things to get me to the place that I needed to be. So when I looked in the mirror and I made a commitment to myself, I said, some things need to change. I'm going to change. And I said, God, I know you say some things need to change. And He was like, yeah. I just asked Him to help me in that moment. I said, Lord, give me the strength to do it. And when I did that, man, some crazy things happened. And I won't go into what all the crazy things were just yet. But my point in this podcast about change is, don't wait. If you know that some things need to change, then change them. You're the only one that can do it. You. No one can make you do it. You have to decide to do it. And when you decide to do it, know that the enemy is going to try his absolute hardest to get you to not, because he knows that if you make a change, well, that affects his bottom line. And affecting his bottom line is something he's going to fight against. But when you make a change, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. It's not going to be near as hard as you think it's going to be, but it's going to be tough. Don't be the farmer. And I would basically say this as a way of kind of closing this out. This is a shorter podcast, but if you think you need to make a change, or if God has told you you need to make a change, then don't hesitate. Because here's the thing. If God has told you to do it, if God acknowledges the fact that you need to make a change, then he's already set things in motion to help you make the change that's necessary to get you where he needs you to be. And that's big. Don't be the farmer who waits for perfect weather, who walks outside and says, no, not today. Not today. It's too hot. It's too cold. It's raining. Don't be the farmer that does that, because the farmer that does that, the person that needs to make the change, that says, I'll do it another day, or I'll put it off because it's not right. It's not the right timing. The person that watches every cloud in the sky, they never get to reap the harvest that they were intended to reap. And that's the key. There's a harvest out there for you to reap, but you've got to make the changes necessary. And if God's already acknowledged that this needs to happen, then do it. Do it. You're the only one that can. And he's not going to step in and intervene and make it happen for you. You're the only one that can do it. He gave you free will as a free will agent to do that. So step in and do it. Step in and do it. If change is necessary, make the change. If you need to be the change, be the change. If you're in an organization that needs change, and you know that, be the change in that organization. So I think we'll stop there for this one. And I'll just say this. I would encourage you to go to God in prayer and say, Lord, are there things in my life that need to change? Are there goals that I've had? Lord, tell me. Either acknowledge those or cast them over to the side so that I can be done with them. But if he acknowledges those, make the change. Until next time, this has been Live, Lead, and In Between. I pray that you lead well in every area of life and everywhere in between. Until next time.